Welcome, I'm Will Morey. I'm the Managing Director of Gamma Business. And
I'm Jed Easton. I'm one of the Partner Acquisition Managers at Gamma.
we're really looking forward to talking to you about the voice reality for MSPs. We're going to be exploring the opportunities, the challenges, and the dynamics we see at play in the MSP channel. Let's get stuck into thinking about the market dynamics, the opportunities, the challenges, what really makes an MSP tick, and some of the feedback that I think we've both had and seems quite consistent between us.
I think, to be honest, it's completely disappeared, right? I don't think there is telco and IT anymore. I think that is completely dispersed. You've got a lot of our bigger partners who are selling IT, and a lot of our, they're buying IT companies. And then we've got, the new IT companies coming into telco because it's just part of what they do now, right? They own the networking capability. So adding voice and adding other services in terms of telephony services on top of that is just part of the service now, right?
I guess like everything, it's a spectrum though. You've still got people at this end, those dyed-in-the-wool voice resellers who originally started their businesses selling PBXs, and they're still out there driving essentially a license resale model. At the other end of the spectrum, you've got completely integrated MSPs where they're looking at the entirety of both, managed cybersecurity, managed voice, managed network support, all of those different aspects, and offering a truly integrated proposition. And then in the middle, exactly as you say, are probably where a lot of our partners are now sitting, which is they have come from a legacy of voice, or they've come from a legacy of IT, but now they're delivering that converged proposition. And I guess, the change we're seeing is, if you read all the forecasts, and I was at the Cavell event last week where they talked a lot about this, and what we're hearing is, the hyperscalers are going to dominate in this market. And I think, you'd be a brave person to bet against them in that space. And we're already seeing that happen. We reflect that in our portfolio, and we'll be talking a lot today about our proposition centered around Microsoft and Teams and Operator Connect, and our proposition are very much around WebEx, Cisco. And there is two relationships that we have that we absolutely will believe will dominate that landscape and those partner relationships going forward. And I think that's changing the whole structure of the channel to make sure that those, essentially those people who sit in the middle of that spectrum that I talked about are the ones that are going to win.
Yeah, I think it's working with that Gartner's magic quadrant, isn't it? Those two, as you said, the Microsofts and the Ciscos, it's investing into those companies because they are the ones that are investing in their products, right? You just look at the R&D budgets of those companies, and they are at the forefront and driving this technology. Talk about all of the things that you mentioned there in terms of security and AI. They're becoming increasingly more important for the UK market and for the IT and MSP market as well. That's what they're talking about on a day-to-day basis. So working with the right providers and us, then choosing the right providers and also underpinning that is more and more important now to provide that sort of resilience.
And we talked about this at our recent regional forums where we kind of articulated what we're seeing is, historically, there has been a market available for niche players in voice. I had a business myself selling a more niche kind of platform into a smaller number of users than Gamma has as a whole. But actually what we're seeing now is increasingly the opportunity to be a niche player is much more challenging, because the amount of revenue that organizations like Cisco and Microsoft have, and the amount that's then funneled back into R&D, meaning you've got Cisco WebEx spending probably upwards of $300, $400, $500 million on their WebEx roadmap. It's really tough for some of the niche UCaaS vendors to then be able to compete at that level. And the same with Microsoft and others. There's this AI arms race we're seeing where people are just throwing trillions of dollars into the whole AI arms race. We're seeing the same thing in cybersecurity, threats increasing across the sort of landscape of voice and everywhere else. And just keeping pace is really hard work.
It's difficult, isn't it? But that's why people buy software, and that's why companies buy software, is that piece of software will evolve with your business, right? So if you're putting that with the right providers who are constantly evolving and upgrading, we talk about Cisco, the upgrades on that are coming in minutes, right? We're seeing it every single day, and they're just putting out there onto the product. We've talked about some of the really exciting stuff that we've got coming. So you want that piece of software to evolve with your business and with your customers as well, as that market changes and as that landscape changes, right? And
I guess it's about that sort of velocity of R&D and the speed of innovation, because with the subscription economy we have today, you're essentially saying, by signing up to align with a vendor, you're essentially saying, I want my company to move at the same speed as that vendor's roadmap, because you're not going to be able to move any faster. You can only move as fast as their R&D is going. And if you've got Cisco driving that kind of investment into that space, yeah, that clearly becomes a really strong choice, because you can keep your business moving forward, constantly utilize every feature. We were talking earlier about pin drop, deep fake insights and understanding, and, you know, spoofed AI calls and that sort of stuff. And now you can embed into WebEx an app that immediately spots and flags within the call deep fake content for AI. Now, yeah, that wouldn't have been thought of years ago. And now suddenly, yeah, if you haven't got that, you're exposed. If you haven't got some of these amazing innovations and sort of that R&D capability, it does leave massive exposures.
And a lot of our partners want to actually have the ability to develop it themselves as well, right? It's not just leaving it to Cisco, but having that ability to have those open APIs to develop the integrations. You know, we've got some out of the box, but you can also develop it yourself using some of the Cisco App Hub. You know, they want that ability to sort of change, and they want the ability to have those integrations. So we're seeing that, you know, a real increase in API capability. Obviously, a big part of us and our portals and services, but actually from the product side of things as well, you know, we open that landscape. So again, partners can evolve and they can differentiate themselves between other partners in the market.
And I guess, that's where, if you're thinking about their IT stack, they're probably spending, you know, maybe £150 a month on Salesforce or on HubSpot or whatever it might be. And voice will be a relatively small component of their spend in comparison. And so actually the driver becomes what's going to work best in either the productivity environment I'm using, the CRM environment, or the workflow automation, or the niche kind of vertical platform you're using. It's our ability to work with that, and essentially, you know, that skill of playing well with others that matters more than ever.
It does, and sometimes the product becomes a little bit irrelevant in that situation then. You know, the actual voice capability and what they can do. You know, a lot of voice products can do certain things, and actually some businesses only need it to do a certain thing. But if it can integrate into one of your systems, whether that's your CRM, whether that's Microsoft Teams, then it almost becomes a little bit irrelevant in terms of what you're talking about as a product. That integration is the biggest part of it. And, you know, that seamless integration between different pieces of software, you know, it's what all of the IT and MSPs companies that we work with, that's what they do on a day-to-day basis, right? We talk about the desktop real estate is one of the big things that they talk about, is limiting the amount of applications that you have on your device.
Sort of bloatware that then ends up dominating your desktop that you just don't want on there.
Exactly, and then slows your processing and all this sort of stuff as well. I know that's a big thing for the Cisco model, is that, you know, the processing of the laptops is, you know, much better because of the processing capability of Cisco and also Microsoft as well.
Let's maybe, I think you've done the same as me, which is to pick up some of the conversations, you know, with partners who are absolutely in that MSP space to prepare for this, and some of the feedback we're getting. One of the messages I got loud and clear was, don't think about this as selling a product. Think about this much more in terms of risk management. If, as an MSP, you have a customer and they're spending £5,000 a month with you, and you're providing some kind of either desktop support, other kind of cloud migration service, or whatever, actually, I don't want to risk that to pick up a small amount of voice on top of this. And if I am going to do that, it has got to be risk-free. It's got to be absolutely, you know, frictionless in terms of the capability that I can wrap around support, because people don't judge the MSP in silos. They're not going to go, oh, that was the voice bit that had an issue there. I'm gonna leave this with you. They judge you on the whole thing, and if there's risk there, it's going to affect the whole relationship. And it feels like that's core to our proposition, is by partnering with people like Microsoft, people like Cisco, we've got the relationships that we know out of the box. We're good to go on governance, on compliance, on reliability, resilience. We manage and tick all of those risk boxes. So going to an MSP, it's not, okay, I could sell this, but what if I mess up?
Yeah, it's that reliability, isn't it? That's it. You know, the confidence, actually. You want confidence in what you're selling, because you want confidence that the product is right for the customer. But as you said, you know, that tiny part of your overall proposition isn't going to remove or, you know, ruin that relationship that you have with your customers. That's the biggest part, and we see that across not just at, you know, IT MSPs, but we see that with the print managed companies that we work with. All of the different elements where they sell multiple products into their customers. You know, the voice is a small part, an important part, because the networking and voice is a major part. And, you know, when your voice goes down, you know about it straight away. Same with your mobile. How frustrating is it when you lose signal on your mobile? So these things are important, and as you said, you're then judged across all of the products and services and the support you then offer to your customers.
And I think, historically, I must admit, I've fallen into this trap where I think to myself, but look at the margin we're offering. We've got this great margin, high margin product for you. Why aren't you buying that? Surely you can see the value in it. And the answer is, not that they don't care about margin, but actually the margin they'd actually be earning in pound note terms is a fraction of what they're getting off the overall IT support contract. So it doesn't matter how rich the margin is in GP percentage terms, it's just not worth the risk if you can't be 100% sure with that. And that's where we've seen some of those legacy UCaaS players trying to bring in very low cost cloud propositions around telephony and VoIP propositions, that sort of stuff in the early days. But that was totally the wrong thing for an MSP audience. What they want, absolute nailed on reliability, absolute nailed on governance, absolutely nailed on compliance, and zero risk. And I think that's the beauty of the Gamma proposition is we're delivering this straight from a vendor that lives and dies by reliability and resilience from Microsoft and Cisco.
I saw a good thing the other day. I know you like your iceberg analogy, which was almost the opposite of the analogy that you showed the other day, which was you see the cheap price of the product, and then everything else that the problems are underneath it, right? Which is the reliability, network security, all of those sorts of things. You see the top and you see the price, but I mean, IT MSPs, as far as I'm aware, they don't care about that, right? They're looking for the strong brand names, they're looking for that reliability, they're looking for that underpinning of the network as well, so that they can have that confidence. Right?
And I think it's great looking back to that actually, because that is, I think, why we're making so much headway in the MSP space, because where Gamma is at its strongest is actually below the waterline. The partners we work with deliver the above the waterline bit of the iceberg. They've got all the amazing product capability, the R&D, all of that goodness. But below the waterline, we deliver the resilience, the reliability, the compliance teams that make sure this works, international compliance to make sure if you want to, you can work with us to sell this in multiple countries. All of those things are much more valuable to an MSP than they maybe have been historically with voice partners.
No, absolutely. Moving away from that, one of the things that we have seen, and I guess every time I speak to a new partner, is one of the kind of why they want to work with us is they're talking about how, for IT MSPs, their customers want less providers, right? They want to buy from one company. And when we speak to IT MSPs, it's one of the benefits when they speak to Gamma is that they can buy all of their telephony services and all of their security, mobile services, data, networking, and they can buy that and manage that through one partner. So we're seeing that from their customers and what their customers are wanting. And then when we speak to IT MSPs, that's one of the things that they love about Gamma is that they can buy all these services, but also, more importantly, manage all of these services, right?
Yes.
That management and control is so important to them. So we need to open that up to them via the Gamma portal, but also then still, as we said earlier, underpin that by APIs, because some of our customers want to be able to provision and manage that through different ways. So we open that up, and it's been it's a big project for us, and it's something that we're doing to continue to develop those APIs within our partner portal that we offer.
I think we do tend to sometimes undervalue the idea of having UCaaS and connectivity in one support environment. But that makes such a big difference, because actually we can then trace problems right the way through the connectivity into the UCaaS platform and resolve it quickly and easily, and we can see that end to end. Whereas a lot of providers in the market, where you'll be buying a UCaaS platform over here, connectivity from over there, something else from over there, and the ability to do that is huge. I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's having that visibility, right? We open that visibility from the networking capability to the voice and also the data connection as well, and having that in one place, and that resolution time is much lower, because they can either do it themselves, they can diagnose it through some of the admin hubs, or they can go in and speak to our 24/7 support team, who are then specialists within that product set as well.
The next thing that came up in my conversations with MSPs was very much around the requirement for absolute operational efficiency, operational simplicity, frictionless engagement, whatever you want to call it, was so much more embedded into the way that MSPs operate and think, because they are very operational organizations. They don't come in, sell something and leave, which typically has happened more maybe in the voice space, but historically they're in there for the long term. They're in there every single day of the week, sometimes solving and delivering problems for their customers. So that means that the operational layer for voice has to be really good. And I know you've had some feedback recently around how our all-inclusive minutes bundles and some of the things we're doing to try and deliver that can help.
I think it's just about simplifying it. That's what we've done. I know one of the biggest things that we had for partners and MSPs was billing is complicated for telecoms partners, and then we can make it complicated. Yes, we can provide the billing platforms, but actually we can simplify that even further by removing that headache, or you don't have to worry about over usage charges or spending caps, because we include all of the minutes from a UK and an international perspective. So it's just about removing those complexities and simplifying it for partners. And then the next level from that is increasing revenues, right? So if you do want to charge for minutes and whatever it may be, then you can increase that if you need to.
Yeah. The last thing, kind of to wrap up those themes that I've been talking about that came out of my conversations, was some of these things that we're talking about today are optional. Some of the things, actually there can be movement on it. It's not going to be maybe the most operationally efficient process from the start. It's not going to be maybe, everything doesn't need to be delivering the huge innovation leaps that we're talking about. The one thing that is non-negotiable in every MSP conversation I've had is trust. Is the trust that the service that we're going to deliver isn't going to cause a problem in that end user, isn't going to create an issue where the customer's thinking, maybe I need to find a different partner for delivering all these other services. And that came through so strongly in all the conversations. Trust is the number one thing. And as a channel organisation of 20 years here at Gamma, and for my career a fair bit longer, it's the one thing that I remember from every conversation with partners. Taking their customer and trusting it with you is actually the heart of the relationship and the bit that really matters more than anything.
Yeah, they're the trusted advisor for their customers, so we are the trusted advisor for them. And I think, as you said, whenever we speak to partners, it's about that partnership and that trust with the partnership is so important to everything.
Trusted delivery partner, that's our role. We've got to make happen what we promised would happen consistently, without a blip and without failure. And I think that's where Gamma, with the investment we've made in our network, the investment we've made in our partnerships with Microsoft and Cisco, we can absolutely hand on heart deliver that to the MSP community. Thanks very much. Hopefully that was useful, and look forward to chatting to Jed again soon.